The idea for this video came about because of a post on LinkedIn that I did about almost a year and a half ago. And it was probably one of my earliest blog posts. And the kind of reaction that I got was a little bit unnerving to me at that time because, like I said, I was just a newbie to blogging. And since then, I have blogged quite a bit. But over the course of the last, I'd say, 2 to 3 weeks, I've actually used this blog post in various conversations with people, and it seemed to get their attention. So then I just thought, hey, what about, let me create a video out of this if it's of value to people. So here is the story. It's California winter, so it's not super cold, but it's reasonably cold at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I was walking with Jackie, my poodle terrier, in the morning. It was cold enough that I had my sweater jacket on. And as we were walking, we saw this lifeless sparrow on the road. A little bit of background. It wasn't just another ordinary day. I had a meeting with a venture capitalist up in Sand Hill Road, which is about 25-30 miles north of where we live. And so the clock was ticking for me. It was 7. I had to be there by 9, which means I had to leave home latest by 8:30. So anyway, so that's the backdrop. So we see this lifeless sparrow on the road, and Jackie sniffs and then moves past. I just followed suit. And then a few minutes later, something caused me to pause. And I pulled Jackie back and we retraced our steps. And I bent down and looked at the sparrow more closely, and I could actually see its beak quiver. Well, I couldn't leave it at that point anymore. As luck would have it, it was garbage collection day, so I had a neighbor's garbage pail outside. So I opened it, picked up a newspaper, scooped the sparrow up. So Jackie on one hand, sparrow on the newspaper on the other hand, I was trudging through the neighborhood. My blood pressure rising, knowing that I had to actually hand off the sparrow to our local vet. Then I could catch up, maybe without a shower or a rush through breakfast. So I was already thinking about the follow-on steps. Anyway, so we got home. By that time, it was already 7:30. So call Dr. Qureshi up, who's our local vet, and I talked to his assistant 7:30 in the morning, so it was very early. And I told her I have this sparrow with me, and when could I drop it off? And she asked me, is that a wild animal? I said, yeah, it isn't domesticated. She said, no, we won't take it. I was like, my heart just sank, and I said, why wouldn't you take it? He says, no, it's we're not allowed to take in wild animals. What I would suggest is you go to this bird sanctuary, 35 miles the opposite direction of where I'm supposed to go meet the BC, and drop it off at Penitentiary Creek. Clock is ticking. It's 7:40 at that point. I had to make a decision. So I picked up the phone, called Chris Rust, the venture capitalist I was supposed to meet. He didn't pick up the phone, so I had this fairly difficult voicemail to leave him. Somewhat unbelievable as well. If somebody tells you that they have a quasi-dead sparrow and they have to go to the other end of the city to drop it off, therefore they're going to be late to meet you for a potential job opportunity. But anyway, I had to do what I had to do. So I rushed through my morning rituals at that point and left home at about 8 a.m. Horrendous traffic, as luck would have it, right? And I had to drive, like I said, 35 miles the other direction. So I reached there about 8:25, 8:30-ish in the morning. Luckily, extremely helpful people. They took the sparrow and they gave me a receipt saying, hey, call back tomorrow. I just sped out of there. Now I had to drive 50 miles the direction towards Sand Hill Road. I reached there eventually at about 9:30, 9:35. I hadn't met Chris before, but his LinkedIn profile looked reasonably familiar to an individual who was sitting by himself. I went up to him, introduced myself. It happened to be Chris, and I apologized again for my tardy behavior. And we talked for about an hour. And I came out still feeling nervous and hassled just because I think I had blown it by taking care of this lifeless sparrow, or seemingly lifeless sparrow. Anyway, so the next day I get a call from the CEO of the company and said, hey, Chris really liked me, and he felt the conversation went really well. That was the end of the story. But then I then look back and look at the takeaways for me from this episode, and there were really three things that stood out. First one is decision making. And we're faced with decisions all our life. And most times there isn't a right or wrong. It's shades of gray. So you can make the argument saying, hey, I should have optimized for my own well-being. And the chances of a sparrow on that cold winter morning of surviving is next to nil. So why bother? But I could not. So I had to take a decision at that point, even though there was no prior script as to how somebody should react in these kinds of situations. Second, again, decision making. So I gave it my best. I was going to hand it off to the vet, but they wouldn't take it. So I could easily said, okay, I've done my best. I'm getting late. I need to get to this meeting. Move on. But I could not. At that point, I felt an obligation to give whatever I could to help this bird survive. So that's the trip down to Penitentiary Creek. And then it's the honesty piece. I could have easily come up with an excuse about a headache or an illness in the family or something else that would sound more believable to Chris. But that thought never even struck me. I had to tell him the way it was, however ludicrous the story sounded. But the most important piece that I regret to this day is the lack of follow-through. I never called the wildlife sanctuary back and ever asked about what happened to the sparrow. Life took over. Other things took priorities. I had the receipt with me for many, many months, maybe even a year, until I discarded it. And that hurts. It hurts because while I did everything that I could have done more. I could have called up and asked how the sparrow did and learned from that experience. If it did survive, obviously I would feel good. If it did not, what would have I done differently? And I never took the opportunity to learn from that. So anyway, so thanks for watching this video. Like I said, it was really inspired by the number of comments I got in the LinkedIn blog post. And for me, just the learnings of making decisions in the face of grayness, no black and white. Being honest, even if it means telling a story that sounds ridiculous. And then third, please follow through in your commitments. And I did not. Thank you for watching. Bye.